Hi, hello. Thank you so much for pre-ordering my new cookbook, Big Vegan Flavor. As a thank you, I have sent you an amazing package with lots of fun bonus content, including, as you might have seen, a 7-course dinner party menu that is fun, it's gourmet, it's Indian inspired, and the main course in that menu is a vegan butter chicken. Vegan butter chicken is the recipe that y'all have been requesting the most over the last few years, and as a thank you, I am sharing that recipe with you today step by step in this video, and we're gonna get started with our chicken substitute. I've got 2 blocks of tofu, and I'm just gonna tear this into about 1-inch chunks with my hands. You'll notice these chunks have a lot more surface area, so that means they're going to better absorb the marinade. There's gonna be more flavor in each piece than if you were to cut them into cubes. So this entire dish can be made a day in advance if you'd like. The flavors develop overnight, even better, so it's super tasty. However, what I like to do is to make most of it, like 2/3 or 3/4 of the dish the day before, and then finish cooking it on the day of serving. That's what I'm gonna do in this video, but you can do everything in advance if you'd like. Now that our tofu has been torn into these cute little chunks, it's time to remove some of the excess water inside the tofu. Because if the tofu is super waterlogged, it's not gonna absorb the flavors in the marinade very well. It's also not gonna crisp up in the pan. So I'm going to cover it with some hot, salty water, let it soak for 10 minutes. For the hot water salt soak, you want 4 teaspoons of kosher salt. It's about 2.5 teaspoons of sea salt and 4 cups of boiling water. Careful. Saying that more to myself than to you. And just let this hang out for 10 minutes. The salty hot water is going to help remove some of the water inside of the tofu by drawing it out and into the salty water. It's also going to flavor the tofu. So while the tofu is resting, we're gonna get started on the marinade. One of the main spices in this recipe is coriander. There's actually a total of 2.5 tablespoons. So when a spice is that prominent, I think it's worth it to toast and grind your own whole spices just so you get that really big punchy flavor. So you wanna get a frying pan over medium heat, and you wanna just stir or shake the pan from time to time so the seeds don't burn. Our coriander is nice and toasty now. You wanna get it off the heat so it doesn't continue to cook. I'm not gonna grind the spices immediately though, because when they're still hot, if you grind them, all of their volatile oils, which is where all that good flavor lives, will start to dissipate into the air. So we'll set this aside for just a few minutes. Another main spice in butter chicken is Kashmiri chili powder. There are several different types of Indian chili powder. If you see something that's just generically labeled chili powder, it's probably gonna be spicy, but butter chicken is on the mild side. It is typical to use Kashmiri chili powder, which has just a little heat, but a lot of beautiful red color. We're gonna use 1.5 tablespoons. And again, this is a mild chili powder, so don't worry, it's not gonna be spicy. It smells so good. And I'm gonna drizzle in 1 tablespoon of oil. Any oil is fine. We're gonna make a loose paste out of this. We have a few more spices. One of my favorites, kasuri methi. These are dried fenugreek leaves. They're often used in North Indian style dishes like this, usually finished. And the key to unlocking their flavors is to kind of crush them up with your fingers before you add them into anything. We're gonna use 1.5 teaspoons or 1/2 tablespoon. We're gonna use the same amount of garam masala. And since garam masala is a mix of toasted ground spices, you're gonna get like a lot of flavor bang out of that. Bang. You're gonna get a lot of flavor bang for your buck out of that. A teaspoon of ground cumin, 1/4 teaspoon each of turmeric, and cinnamon. This next spice is optional. If you have it, go ahead and use it. It's amchur. If you've made some of my Indian recipes, you might be familiar with it. It's the dried powder from unripe green mangoes, and it adds this really lovely tart flavor. We are gonna add a little bit of lemon juice as well, so you could just stick to the lemon juice if you don't have this. Our coriander seeds have cooled down a bit, so now it's time to grind them. You need a spice grinder or a mortar and pestle. If you don't have one of those, just go ahead and use pre-ground coriander. It smells so good. At this stage, we want 1 tablespoon of the coriander. Our tofu should be ready to drain, so let me do that. It's really heavy. We're gonna let the tofu hang out on this towel and kind of just dry out for a few minutes while we finish the marinade. Gentle. Fresh garlic and ginger are pretty classic in any sort of Indian yogurt marinade. I'm gonna grate the garlic and ginger right into here. And this is about 1 inch of peeled ginger. Oh shit. As I mentioned, butter chicken, tandoori chicken, they're typically marinated in yogurt. I find that a really thick coconut yogurt like this works great. If you don't have access to a thick vegan yogurt, you do want to kind of mix in some thick coconut cream from a can of coconut milk, because otherwise the marinade will be too thin and it won't stick to the tofu, it'll kind of fall off. You can see how thick this is. This is what you're looking for. And finally, we'll do a tablespoon of lemon juice. Almost forgot. Salt and pepper. It's gonna be so good. All right, let's pat dry our tofu. We're just gonna gently dump our tofu into the marinade. Let's see if I can get it all. Ta-da! You need one of these, a silicone spoonula, and that way you can gently fold like so and make sure all of the tofu is coated with the marinade. Now the question is, how long do you marinate this? I think it's best to do a full 24 hours for the best flavor and texture. If you are trying to make this all on one day, that's fine. You can marinate it in the morning for like 2 hours minimum and then cook the rest later. But if you can do a longer marinade, even 8 hours or 12 hours, you will get better results. It's already delicious. I'm gonna cover this and put it in the fridge, and next I'm gonna show you how to make the butter sauce or the gravy. So butter chicken has two main components, the chicken, or in our case the tofu, and the butter sauce or the gravy. And our gravy, butter sauce, whatever you wanna call it, starts off pretty simply with some Indian aromatics like onions, garlic, green chilies, and ginger, pretty basic stuff. And your slices definitely don't need to be perfect or even, because this is all gonna get blended in the end. I'm just gonna slice the garlic. Could also chop it. It doesn't really matter as long as the pieces aren't too big, because then they won't cook through. And just do the same thing for your ginger. Now butter chicken is supposed to be mild, so I'm adding just a little bit of heat. I'm going to slice a little slit in this green chili pepper, and now the heat inside of the pepper is just going to gently infuse the sauce. Before I start cooking the sauce, I'm going to measure out my the ground spices. We're gonna be using a lot of the same spices we did in the marinade. So a tablespoon each of Kashmiri chili powder, ground coriander, and the kasuri methi. Just a little bit of turmeric, 1/4 teaspoon. That's one of the mistakes I often see with Indian cooking, is people use way too much turmeric. If you use a lot, it can kind of taste a little musky, shall I say. The final spice I'm gonna use in here is cardamom. Inside of these green pods are the cardamom seeds. That is where all the flavor is, and that's what we're gonna use. You only need a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cardamom for this recipe, but if you're gonna make the chocolate chai mousse tart from the dessert in the dinner party menu, that recipe also calls for freshly ground cardamom, so you can do a couple teaspoons of cardamom at once and use it across both recipes. Whoa. If you wanna do all your grinding of spices at once, that is definitely a more efficient way to do it than I am. Grinding spices, people, takes a few extra minutes. It is so worth it. This is the best smell in the world. All right, let's start cooking the sauce. Once your oil is shimmering, you're gonna go ahead and add 1 cinnamon stick. I like to break it in half so you get more cinnamon throughout. When you're toasting spices, you wanna keep them moving pretty frequently so that nothing burns. After about a minute, we'll go ahead and add a heaping teaspoon of cumin seeds. Once those are a few shades darker, it's time for those onions. These don't need to be babysat, so I'm gonna use that time to chop up some tomatoes. And the nice thing about this recipe is you can do a very rough chop. Remove any of the tough cores in the middle, because those won't soften too much. You don't wanna forget about the onions totally, because the spices will burn. Your kitchen is about to smell amazing. While we wait, I'm gonna walk through a couple final ingredients for our butter sauce. Butter chicken is supposed to be buttery and rich, and so 2 ingredients here are gonna bring that. One is raw cashews. When you soak cashews, they get super creamy. The nice thing about this recipe is we don't need to soak the cashews. They're just gonna soften in the masala itself. And the next ingredient is butter. Vegan butter, of course. And we need 4 tablespoons of that, because this is supposed to be a rich, buttery, indulgent dish. That's a little too much. The onions are looking nicely golden. You don't need them to get browned. We're gonna add in the garlic, ginger, and serrano pepper. These you do need to stir frequently, so don't try to multitask. Now, ground spices can burn pretty quickly, so make sure you're stirring constantly. They really only need about 30 seconds. As you can see, there's a lot of stuff stuck at the bottom. No worries, the tomato juices are gonna deglaze that. Need a fair amount of salt for all these tomatoes. Pepper. and our butter and cashews. We're gonna cook this for 5 minutes. Now you wanna lower the heat to medium low or low and cover the pan and let this simmer for 15 minutes. You do wanna stir it a few times during then, so don't totally walk away because it might start to stick. As you can see, the tomatoes have really softened. They're kind of falling apart. They're rich and jammy. That's exactly what you're looking for. And now all we need to do is blend it. First things first, very important, scoop out that serrano pepper because if you blend it, it'll get very spicy. And make sure to toss the cinnamon sticks because these will not blend nicely. All right, now as gently as you can, plop it in there. I'm gonna need to use a spatula, aren't I? And just a little bit of water to help everything blend. Make sure you remove this center cap so that the steam can vent, and just hold a kitchen towel down on the top so it doesn't explode everywhere. Now, depending on how strong your blender is, you might need to blend this for several minutes to get it super smooth. But this is what you're looking for, a nice smooth consistency. Give it a taste. This stuff is like drinkable. You could easily just have a bowl of this. It would be delicious. If you wanted to continue with the rest of this recipe on the same day, just go ahead and wipe out the pan we used earlier and assemble that way. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge overnight and I'll finish this dish tomorrow. I'll see you then. I'm so excited to show you how to finish this vegan butter chicken. We're gonna pan fry, shallow fry our marinated tofu. I just pulled it out of the fridge a minute ago. You don't want to let it sit out room temperature for too long because the marinade will start to loosen and start to fall off the tofu when you fry it. So you want to get a large nonstick frying pan over medium-high heat. And you want to thin the layer of oil on the surface of the pan so the tofu doesn't stick or burn. Really gotta get a new oil bottle. This one is so slow. I like to pick it up with a spatula that's slotted. That way any excess liquid will just fall back into the bowl. And since we are using 2 blocks of tofu, you have to cook this in 2 batches because there's just too much tofu for 1 pan. I like to have one of these little offset spatulas. It's really helpful for separating some of the tofu pieces that stick together. And it's also nice to be able to flip one, see if it's starting to brown, and then you can start flipping the rest. You will notice that some of the marinade is slipping off the tofu. That is okay. As it fries, it'll start to kind of stick back onto the tofu, but this is why it is important to use a thick yogurt when you are marinating it, because a thinner yogurt will definitely slip off even more. All right, these ones over here are starting to look good, so I'm gonna start flipping them with my bigger spatula. Oh yeah, look at that nice golden crust. And don't worry if they're not browning at the same rate. The heat distribution of your pan might vary, but it's all gonna taste good in the end. And don't be afraid of a little char. It's gonna make it a little smoky, and it's actually my favorite part. So as you can see, this wire rack situation serves a couple purposes. At the bottom, you'll notice that quite a bit of oil has fallen to the paper towel. So we don't need that excess oil, and we're not getting our sheet pan dirty because we have the paper towels there. And then the wire rack is gonna help crisp up the tofu as it rests, so you get a nice kind of crisp exterior, which is a lovely contrast with the creamy butter sauce. Make sure to wipe out your pan because all of this stuff will start to burn if you fry it again. You're gonna repeat the process with the rest of the tofu, some more oil, and then we'll finish the dish. We've got our beautifully fried tofu. I'm gonna let it hang out on the wire rack, and in the meantime, we're going to finish the butter sauce and then put it all together. It's so exciting. One of the things I think that sets apart really good Indian food is the layering of spices and flavors at different stages in the recipe. Again, butter chicken needs butter, so we've got a little more vegan butter here. We're gonna very briefly toast our 2 main spices, the Kashmiri chili powder and the ground coriander. You wanna stir this pretty constantly for 20-30 seconds. It should start to smell really nutty, and that's when we pour in the butter sauce. Woo! Might want to lower the heat so that doesn't happen. And because it is so thick after having rested, I'm gonna add a little bit of hot water just so the sauce isn't too thick. Look at these beautiful colors. So this is kind of the consistency you're looking for. It's thick, but not so heavy. It's spoonable, drizzleable, if that's a word. When you order butter chicken from like delivery at a restaurant, they're trying to keep costs down, so your sauce is a lot thinner, it's a lot more oily. But we're making it at home so we can have this nice, luxurious, buttery, creamy version, and it's gonna taste so much better than a delivery option. It's phenomenal. We're gonna let the tofu cook in the sauce for just a few minutes to warm it through, and so the sauce really seeps into the tofu and flavors it even more. We've got all these yummy charred crumbs at the bottom. Don't discard them. Stir them in here because you're gonna get this amazing smoky flavor. Last final thing, while the tofu hangs out, we're gonna chop up some cilantro for our garnish. If you are making it just as the one dish you're making, this will serve 4 or 5 for dinner. But if you're making the whole dinner party menu that I've shared, you can definitely spread this across 8 servings as long as you have some naan or pita and rice to go on the side. Just a few more finishing ingredients: garam masala and more of the kasuri methi. Cilantro, so pretty. Final squeeze of the lemon juice to brighten everything up, and we are ready to plate. I'm so excited. Get some on my pita. Yes, there are a few different steps and components involved, but I think the results are gonna blow your mind. I just wanted to say thank you so much for pre-ordering my cookbook and for your support. I hope you enjoy this vegan butter chicken recipe and the entire Indian dinner party menu. If you do, let me know how you like it, and I'll see you guys on YouTube, on my blog, Instagram, you know all the places. Bye!